In this video, we're just going to make a little snowman, but it's going to be a child dressed as a snowman. We're going to do the more simple version of the faces rather than the really complicated ones for this one. So I've got some flour and modelling paste here that I've dyed a flesh colour. I'm just going to take a little bit off. And in fact, I might take a little bit more off because it's going to be quite a big head, I think. You'll find whatever size ball you create, when we push in the features, it becomes a little bit bigger than what you would expect because we kind of flatten it down a little bit. So this is literally just the flour and modelling paste. If you use normal fondant, it'll just be a little bit too soft. Okay, so we'll start with our basic head shape, which is a nice round ball. What I'm going to do is, using my fingers, I'm going to push in and create two eye sockets like that. Now I've got this upside down to me, so this is going to be the chin, this will be the forehead. So I'm just going to push the chin in to create a bit of a point. I'm just going to flatten that bit there. Okay, so we're just going to take a tiny bit of the fondant again, and I'm just going to put a little bit of water at the bottom of the eye sockets where a nose would go. And what I'm going to do is just roll a tiny little teardrop shape, only small, out of the fondant, and we're going to just put that in the middle, just there. And then we want two more round balls, only tiny, probably a bit small for you to see what I'm doing. One's a little bit bigger than the other, so I'll add a little bit more to the smaller one. It becomes a bit fiddly when they're this small. And we're just going to stick that next to or at either side of the bigger one that you put on, like that. Okay, to create a nose. Now, we're not going to worry about giving them ears because the ears are going to be covered up. But what we'll do is we'll give them a mouth. So using my modelling tool, I'm just going to draw a line in there, and then I'm going to draw, I'll try and push down to create an open mouth, like that. Okay, if you want your child to have dimples, just use the bottom of the paintbrush, push in a little indentation either side. Now, because it's a simplified version of the figures, we're just going to poke eye sockets in rather than painting fancy eyes. So in fact, we'll do it a little bit smaller than the hole I'll make from that. So I'm going to use a cocktail stick, and I'm just going to push it into the centre, and I'm going to waggle it around a little bit so it creates a bit of an oval shape rather than just a round circle. Okay, so that's the basic shape of our child's face. Just make sure it's even and that you're happy with it. Okay, now because it's a child, I tend to keep the faces quite rounded rather than giving them long slim faces. Okay, what we'll do now is we'll just give them some teeth. So I'm going to put a little bit of water in the indentation we've made, also a little bit in each eye socket. I'm going to just take a small pinch of white fondant. Doesn't matter if it's just normal fondant or if it's modelling paste. I'm going to roll it thin at either end, and you're just going to push it into the mouth, and then you can use a modelling tool to press it so that it fully fills that gap that you've put in. So I'll just turn it this way for a second so I can see what's what. Try and get it to the very edges if you can. Okay. And then I'm just going to put a little line with my cocktail stick at either side, so that it looks like they've got a top and bottom set of teeth, like so. Now I'm going to give them a little bit blusher. I'm just going to use my pink rainbow dust, which is edible. Just a little bit on the brush, dab off the excess in the lid, and you're just going to that on the cheeks like so. And then we just want some black fondant now for the eyes. So you don't need much black fondant. And we're doing the head first so that it has time to set while we're working on the body. Otherwise you'll find when we're working on it that if the head hasn't set, it moves around a little bit too much. So that's one eye in. Just roll the other one to a little oval shape as well. Just push that in place like so. Okay, so in fact we'll make it a girl and we'll give them some little eyelashes. So again, just food colouring using a brush. To stop your brush splitting, twist it as you're pulling it out of the paint so it stays in that point. Okay, and we're just going to start by drawing on. I'll try and do one either side to start with, and then I'll do the rest from that first one. One side's a little bit longer than the other. Okay. And of course I almost forgot eyebrows, so we'll give some little eyebrows. Turn it round to do the other one. Again, just a case of painting it on. If you want to have a practice on a bit of old fondant first before putting it on your real face, that's fine. Okay. So that's our face. We're going to let that set for about half an hour while we're working on the body. So what we're going to do now is make a little base for our figure to sit on. So I've just got normal fondant mixed with a little bit of modelling and flower paste. So I'm just going to roll it out. I want it to stay quite thick for the base. Okay, so about that kind of thickness is what I'm after. Obviously if you want yours thicker or thinner, that's fine. Wouldn't go too thin, otherwise it won't support your figure very well. So I've just cut a small piece of greaseproof paper so that it doesn't stick to the surface, so I can move it around easily. So I've just got a cutter. I'm just going to push into the middle. I'll just remove the bits from the outside, and then that should come off. So we'll build onto this now. So this is what we're going to use for the body, which is the modelling and flower paste. So I'm just kneading it to make sure it's pliable enough. If you find it dry, just put a bit of Trex in with it. Now I've got more than I need here. So I'm just going to roll it into a ball so I can see size-wise if it's about right for my body. So it might be just a tiny bit too big, so we'll just take a little bit off. Just going to roll it again to try and get rid of any cracks that form. If you press quite hard when you're rolling, you should be able to get the cracks out. Okay, so we're going to roll again into a little bit of a teardrop shape for our body. Just check that you're happy with the size of the head against your body as well. Okay, so what we're going to do is take in a tool, not the one that I've picked up, the stitching wheel tool. I'll put little links in the description box under the video for you to find where these are from. I'm going to run this up the centre of the body, as they're meant to look like they're in a fancy dress costume. And we're just going to add some larger stitching lines like so. And what we'll do is sit that onto our little base that we've made. Now you don't want to sit it too far forward, otherwise you'll find the legs won't fit on. Just going to secure it in place with a bit of water. You can use edible glue if you prefer. So we're just going to sit that on there. And what we're going to do is secure it in place with a cocktail stick that's going to run through the centre. So you're going to push that down, making sure that you don't squash the body when you do it. Just make sure it's in the shape that you want it. And we're going to add some buttons down the front. So I'm just going to put a little bit of water down the front. Just make sure as well that you can definitely see your stitching enough. Press on a little bit harder if it needs it. So now we're going to just add some black buttons, like a snowman would have curl buttons, but we're going to make these look a bit like actual black buttons. So you want 3 balls of similar size. Okay, so they should all be similar. And we'll start from the top and just push that on, them on. I think this one's drying up a little bit. So I'm just going to check if I've spaced them roughly evenly. Okay, and I've just got some small balling tools, and what I'm going to do is just push an indentation into the centre of each of my buttons. Then using a cocktail stick, we're going to put some little buttonholes. So if they're quite small, just put 2 buttonholes in. I think my icing's dry because it's starting to crack a little bit. So I'm just going to poke in 2 holes in each one. If you want them even more detailed, you can always add like a little line of stitching that runs in each button. So now we're going to give them some arms and legs, which of course are just going to be white because they're dressed in the snowman costume. So I'm going to take off a small amount of fondant and I'm just going to roll it into a sausage shape so I can see if it's roughly the right size. So I think I'm going to need a tiny bit less than that. So again, just putting it against it so you can see size wise if it's right. What I'll do then is roll it into a ball so I can get the other one the same size. Okay, so for our actual leg, we're going to start by rolling so that we've got a bigger end at one end than at the other. And we're just going to flatten that a little bit like so. And then we're going to flatten this end the opposite way. And what we're going to do is using our little stitching wheel again, is run that up the centre like so. And then you can put little stitch lines in additionally if you want. And we're just going to push that next to the figure like that. And we're going to repeat for the other side. So now we're just going to do some arms. Start with a ball, roll it, just a bit of a sausage shape, and we're just going to check for length and size. Round it off a little bit at the ends. So that should be alright lengthwise. We'll do the other one the same. We're just going to put our little stitching lines down each one. And then we're going to stick them onto our little body. Position them wherever you want them to go. So mine are going downwards. So I'll do them so that they meet in the middle, like so. If you want them to come up and touch the head, you need to put the head on first before putting the arms on. You can always add a couple of little snowballs for a bit of decoration if you wanted as well. Just down there. And you could even, if you wanted, put one in their arms. Like so. Just make sure that it is stuck properly though if you are going to do that. And obviously the hand wants to come onto the snowball. Okay, so hopefully my head should fit nicely on there. So my head fits on, but what I need to do now is cover the back of the head so they look like they're wearing a snowman outfit. So we're going to take some more of our white modelling paste and fondant that we've got mixed together. And we're just going to take a small round ball that we're going to put on the top of our body, like that, so that the head doesn't look too squashed onto the body. Okay, I've just put a little bit of water on the top of it so that we can stick the head on easily. Okay. Now what I want to do is start with a ball for the back of the head, and I'm just going to flatten it a little bit so I can see if size-wise if it's about the right size for what I'm after. So I'll just put a little bit more in it. So I'll start again with my ball, squash it down a little bit, and I'm just going to pinch it all the way around the edges. And then I'm going to check size-wise if it's going to come around some of the head. So it'll come around some of it, but it won't fully go around. So we're going to pinch it a little bit thinner around the edges. Okay, can come quite far over at the front, that's fine. So what we're going to do now is put some water on the back of there, and I'll stick the head onto it like so. And now I'm going to start it move around a little bit at first. I'm going to start pushing it around the edges. Just be careful if your head hasn't firmed up enough that you don't press on very hard, because you don't want to squash your head. And of course you can use a bigger brush than I've got if it makes things easier for you. So we're going to bring that over and we're going to try and push it round just gradually so that we try and avoid getting creases. So we start to create a bit of a hood almost for them. Now I might have put a little bit much water in, which will prevent it just sticking. And we will neaten up the edges a little bit as well. So I'm going to bring it part way over, like so, as you don't need to be able to see the full face at the front. Okay, and we will neaten off that edge afterwards. So I've actually ended up covering up her eyebrows now anyway. Okay, so she's got a nice rounded head. So that will fit onto there, okay? What we're going to do now is put a little seam around the edge to neaten it up. But also, we're going to run a seam up the middle, which I had forgotten about. So we'll put a seam up the middle, around the back. You can put some little crease lines after we've tried our best not to get them in. You can put some little crease lines on, because if it was a costume, it would probably gather a little bit around the face, just there. Okay. And I'm just going to put a little bit of water just around that very edge, which is where we'll stick an edging on to neaten it up. Okay, so just taking our flour and modelling paste, you're going to roll it nice and thin. Okay, so once you've got it to the right thickness that you want it, you're going to push it along the edge of that line till we get to the bottom, and around this side too. I'm just going to put a little bit more water at the bottom to make sure it sticks. Okay, so it just neatens off that little edge that we had on. I'm just going to push my arms to again, they want to move. Okay, so she's got a little snowman head on. Now, if you're worried about squashing your head when you push it onto the cocktail stick, you can put your cocktail stick into the head first, pull it out, and then slot it onto that one. Okay, so we've just pushed it on there. Just make sure, if your body hasn't set, that it doesn't start to lean backwards. If you are worried about it leaning backwards, just put something behind it so that it doesn't go too far back. So what we're going to do now is give the snowman a little bit of a face. We want a bit of orange, so I'm just going to colour this little bit here orange. So we've dyed that orange. I'm just going to roll it into a bit of a cone shape. It doesn't have to be very pointy. It can be quite a rounded cone. And we'll just put it on there to see size-wise if it looks alright. Or if you prefer not to have a cone, you can roll it into an oval, which we could just stick on the front of the head. It seems quite sticky, but just to make sure, I'm just going to put a bit of water on there anyway. So we're going to stick that on there, so it kind of half goes over the edge of the costume, like so. And then we're going to add in some eyes. So I'm just working out this way whereabouts we want our eyes to go. So we're going to put an indentation in at either side. Not sure if I've done those even or not. Okay. And we'll just roll some black fondant and put that in there. We only need a small amount. Just going to push those in the eye sockets. Now if your ball's a little bit big, you can roll it into a bit of a teardrop shape at the bottom and then slot that bottom bit in there like so. She's starting to look a bit more snowman-like now, and of course we can give her a scarf. And if you want to give her a hat, you can give her a hat. So we're just going to roll this out. I'm just going to dust my work surface with some corn flour. We're going to roll it out. Okay. And we're not going to put it on as one large piece. What we're going to do is I'll cut a strip that will go around the neck. Hopefully I've cut it long enough. So we'll just pull it from the back round. So I'll stretch it out a little bit. So we're going to try and get a little bit of water in the neck crease if we can. I'm going to start from around the front, bring it round. Like so. I'll just use my little paintbrush to poke it in place, and we'll cover the join up now as well. So what we're going to do now is use this bit here to cut some more little pieces, which will be the bottom bits of our scarf. So they don't need to be huge. So we've got two bits like that. I'll stick them together. Okay. And then we'll stick these. Pinch them a bit at the top. See if you can get them in. In fact, we might have to move that snowball a second to get the scarf in. Or if you want, you can put it so it goes over to one side. Sorry, I have to keep moving it towards me to see what's happening with it. Then I'm just going to take a little ball, which will be the knot on our scarf. So we'll put the knot in there, like so. And then we can give her a snowball back. And if you want to give her a hat, just start with a little ball that we're just going to squeeze down around the edges. So you'll see that's squeezed down, flatten it a little bit on the top. Okay. And then we'll roll the rest out. Roll it out quite thin. And we'll use a little cutter. So I'm just using a round cutter. Okay, and we're just going to put that on the head, and then we'll attach that bit. So I'll just see size-wise. Okay. So you can stick it further back on the head if you prefer. Just be careful that your head doesn't fall backwards. Okay, so we're just going to put that on there. In fact, we might put it slightly to one side. Like so. And then obviously you can move the edge of your hat around a little bit, however you want it to go. Okay, and that's it. That's our person or child dressed as a little snowman. Thank you for watching.
If you liked this video and would like to see more, please click on the images of the other videos suggested. Also, please do subscribe to my channel using the button at the bottom right hand corner of the screen. You can also visit my cake website and my Facebook page to see more cakes and ideas.